What's up, everyone? This is Cheyenne B, and you are listening to 5D Marketing Secrets Radio. So here's the real mystery. How do real spiritual-based business owners like us grow a large following of our soulmate clients who are begging to pay us for our skills and gifts? How do we increase sales and make a contribution while also making a killer income? That is the blaring question, and this podcast will give you the answer. My name is Cheyenne Burnett, and welcome to 5D Marketing Secrets Radio. Hey everybody, Cheyenne here, and welcome back to another episode of 5D Marketing Secrets Radio. Now, this is a very special episode to me because I was actually able to do an interview with the one and only Elaine Marolakos Edelson. And if you don't know Elaine, she is a modern mystic and the owner of Astrology, Mojo.com. She's also a best-selling author. But the reason I'm so excited for this interview is because she has really allowed us to pull back the curtain and show you the insider secrets of how she has been able to take her fifth dimension calling and turn it into a profitable third dimension career. Elaine actually has thousands of clients all over the world with her astrology business, and she has been absolutely open and willing to answer all my questions about how she's done it. So if you are a spiritual practice owner and you are looking to expand, or you're struggling right now to figure out how to find your soulmate client, this is the interview for you. I hope you enjoy. Miss Elaine, like I said, I've had the opportunity to actually have experienced you as an astrologist, but your story is so unique to me because you actually originated not in a spiritual space, but you're an author, you have a business background. And so I really want to hear your story. I want to understand, what was it? Did you always know that you were going to own a spiritual business, or did this kind of evolve over time? Or how did you get into this?
That's a great, funny question. And how much time do we have actually?
Much time as you'll give me.
Yes, you're funny. Well, you know, I have always been this way, and not knowing that other people were not this way, I figured this is the way we are. And as I began to grow and realize that other people weren't talking about seeing things or hearing things or experiencing things in the middle of the night, voices or manifestations in the bedroom, that's when things got a little dicey for me. So growing up as a teen was not a healthy experience for me. I was emotionally held. I was had no one to talk to really about stuff. But so I always knew I was this way. But I'll tell you, at the age of 11, my dad always promoted, many things, and he was an artist. He was a musician. He had to work a regular job, that kind of thing. And that was hard for him. He was an actor, and my mom read Greek coffee, actually Turkish coffee grinds. But when I was with my aunt one day, and I was 11, and we were sitting at her kitchen table, which is where we always sat, and she would do this form of card reading, which was always fun for me. And then one day she was reading a book. And I said, "Oh, what's that?" It was a pretty big book. And she said, "Oh, this is about astrology." Now, up until that point, no one had ever mentioned astrology before, but every night before bed, I would see the same image over and over in my head. It was a circle with a line, a line, a line, a line, a line, a line, a circle, and a line. And it just kept going on and on. And I figured, okay, that's just something I'm seeing. And then she opened the book and she showed me, "Oh, this is what an astrology chart looks like." And I was like, "Oh, I know what that is." And then she read to me about, how to quickly do your, chart to get basic understanding. So that's where it became concrete for me, not just astrology, but intuition. And then as I grew and understood more about, once I got past the teen years, which were very traumatic and disabling for me because I was in denial of who I was and how I felt. And then it got better in my 20s, and I thought, this is who I am.
Yeah.
And even though I was trained as an artist and I went to film school and I got a job working at Nabisco, and I was designing a milk bones box one day. And at the same time, simultaneously, this was in my mid 20s, I was learning how to channel and harness my abilities. And I started to teach meditation classes in my apartment for free. And then I actually had my first paid client uh, for a reading because I just started, information just started coming through me and I always listened to it. I had more help from the spiritual world than I did in the real world, or the so-called real world.
This one.
Yeah, this one. So I would hear things, and I mean, not just a voice here and there. I mean, conversations like, okay, now you need to get it together. Okay, now you need to stop this. Let's move on. It's like, wow. And so when I was in my mid 20s, I had been in a very long standing relationship that was so not healthy. And I knew he was leaving. I had dreams and I told him, "You're leaving." And he said, "No, I'm not leaving." And a few months later, it happened exactly the way I had said. And at the same time as I'm working as a freelance artist and he was leaving, I didn't know who I was and kind of hit an all-time low. And what happened then was, living alone, I kind of went into hibernation for a few months, lived off my savings until it got to the point where I would sit down and do a meditation every day just to get centered, because I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
It's like, I thought this person was my whole life. I thought it was going to be art. And then I'm having these visions and I'm not being acknowledged or validated for them. So I'm thinking I'm crazy. And so what happened then was, in my meditation, it was a tiny point of light in total blackness. And this tiny point of light came closer and closer and closer until it got right up into my face. And it was one word, and it said, "Eat." So I realized, oh my gosh. And like it kind of startled me. I went into my dressing room and opened up the robe that I was living in for 6 months. And I could see my rib cage. And I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? So I started to get myself together and got a part-time job, and then started formulating this business, and then went into freelance art and working at Nabisco. And I had my first client. And when I was on my lunch break, because we didn't have cell phones then. But I was on my lunch break and I could check my machine. Remember those? Anybody remember those? And I heard a woman crying, and it was my client, and she had just done what I suggested, and she had a wonderful opening, but she was, whatever. It was a little too much for her.
Yeah.
And I couldn't call her back. So right then and there, I realized I got people and service. I have dog bones. I quit that day.
Wow.
And that was huge. And so I started my first business, Harmony Through Balance. And it was a leap, to say the least, because I thought, if I'm crazy, then my crazy makes me happy and causes no harm, but rather uplifts people. So if I'm crazy, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
And, so then I kind of thought this could be a business, but I didn't know that much about it. So I took some financial classes. I took a marketing class. It was not in my awareness at the time. My forte was looking at a person, seeing their aura, understanding their energy. I would hear their voice. I'd get more information. Then I would just ask their birthday, get even more information. And so by then, I made it a point to understand that if I am to serve a large populace, and at first I thought everybody was my client, when you're just starting a business, especially in the spiritual, metaphysical world, you start a business, you're like, I'm going to help everybody. And so then you start catering to everybody. And then everybody, I would do groups and they would say, yeah, Tuesday's not good, but Thursday's good. I go, okay, I'll change it to Thursday. And then 4 other people would say, yeah, but Wednesday's better for me. And I was like, and then after a while, and then I met my husband, Dean, who was a good friend at the time. And he said, you just got to set it forget it and let them come. And if they want it, they will make time for it. And at that time, I didn't have that awareness. That wasn't in my consciousness because I was always about service to others. So, that's when the beginnings of my business started in the late 80s. And then in the early 90s, I started to have a better sense of self.
Yeah.
And that helped me to branch out even more with an actual, I had business cards, I had times of business. People would come to the house. In fact, that's how I met Dean, my husband, who became my husband after a while. And I did trance channeling, and he came for a reading, and we became immediate friends afterward. And then I was introduced to technology because everything was by the phone or setting up appointments in a group or going to a facility, a hall to give to speak.
Right.
But then Dean bought me a computer, and wow.
Wow.
And technology keeps churning and turning in our house, and we keep using it. And I keep thinking, what if Buddha had a computer? Wow. So I figure if I am who I am and I can do what I do, I mean, literally it's taken a while, but I've distilled my business because I also write historical fiction, but that came out later. That started about 20 years ago, although I've always written ever since I was 7. I just started writing. But so I parse my mind into, I've got a spiritual writing practice business, and then I have historical fiction author business. So I do that on one side, but the other side is literally is a modern mystic. It's what I call myself. I use transformational astrology, numerology, clairvoyance, and empathy as practical tools.
Right.
To help women, it's mostly women, sometimes men, to activate their intuition and their inner power so they can end their struggle and design an intentional life with wealth, health, passion, and purpose. And in order to do that, I've had to let go of a lot of behaviors so that I would stop chasing clients, and you have a product that is there specifically to help people in my business and in my world, whether it's a massage therapist, a tarot reader, numerologist, an astrologer, clairvoyant, the metaphysical world. You understand that it takes marketing. I am grateful to have my husband who loves marketing. Loves marketing.
For everybody that's listening, I adore him almost as much as I adore Elaine.
That's cute. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So
that's amazing, truly. And that, this is new information to me too. And so you will laugh at some of the parallels between our lives because we're basically the same person.
We're the same person, people. We're just like in Star Trek, young Spock meets old Spock.
Right? If I am as beautiful as you are, then
at 58, you're beautiful. You will always be beautiful.
Wow, that's amazing. I do have a question though. I want to kind of take it back because you said you transitioned, like literally you woke up one day and you decided, I'm done working in the 3D world, and I'm going to pursue my spiritual passion as my career. That's a huge transition, especially to just make, like a hard cut decision in a day. So what challenges did you face with that, and what was that like for you to literally quit your normal job and transition into a spiritual business?
Well, that was terrifying.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will say, well, how long have you been in your business? And I'll say 34 years at this point, and always. And it just keeps changing, it just keeps transforming. So when I made that transition, it was because of a couple of factors. One, I had given my all into a personal relationship. It was 11 years in a relationship that I woke up one day and I realized I put this person first at all times. I put everyone first at all times. I don't know who I am anymore. And when this person left, it really hit me hard that I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing, even though I knew I had certain gifts and talents. I didn't know business, and when I would go at any time, when I would go into any group situation, people say, "Oh, what do you do?"
Yeah.
And I'd say, "Oh, I'm an intuitive or an astrologer." There's two very distinct reactions. One is, "Oh, have you tried the cookie?" And then they walk that way. Or it's really, yeah, it's like, okay, that's their soup over there, or they look at me and they say, really, what do you see? And it's like, oh, what do you see? Tell me about me. Talk about me.
Right.
And I would feel bad about the person walking away and go, okay, whatever. So I would minimize myself as a result, or the person who came and was like, I would maximize myself. And these extremes left me even worse off than I was. So I had a pretty intense spiritual awakening and an experience. And some people might call it a Saturn return in astrology.
Okay.
But I am of the mindset that planets do not make anything, they don't do anything to you. They don't make anything happen because we live in a cooperation with our environment. So when the planets make a move, you feel it.
Right.
And when you make a move, the planets are reflecting that. And this is why we are not puppets. This is why I have a little inner reaction when I hear an astrologer say, oh, Mars is doing this. Now this is going to happen to you. And I'm thinking, yeah, watch me not have it be that way, because it's damaging to the psyche.
I agree.
Number one, to think that a thing has power over you, then what's the point of trying to change? What's the point of making your life your own and creating what you want, So during this time frame, I literally, when I hit rock bottom and I thought, what do I do? And I cried for days and months, and I was pitiful and a victim and, near suicide. And I was having the thoughts, it's like, please. And I was like praying, and I didn't pray at the time. I had no belief system. I don't believe in organized religion. I believe in spirituality. Mm-hmm. And I believe in compassion, and I believe in a divinity, but not the religious definition of such. And so what happened was, when I started to think suicidal thoughts and I couldn't stop crying for hours, I was sobbing and heaving and I hadn't been eating. I literally got knocked across the room by no one there. Wow. And my first thought, because I felt like a slap on my face, and I got knocked over. And my first thought was, something cares enough about me to stop me. That's what I didn't have physically. I didn't have good friends, because I was very isolated and I didn't know who I was, and I was embarrassed and ashamed a lot of times, so, and awkward, it's just an awkward person. So, when that happened, then that's when the training began. And literally I got sat down in the middle of the room, and my guides, my angels, not religious beings, entities, sat me down and said, let's get it together. You have talents, you have gifts. Do you want to use them? If so, let us help you. If not, this is the end. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't want to go. I want to stay. And so they began my training. So I had spiritual training, and that way. And then I did the practical thing and had counseling and read books and studied everything I could at the time, without internet. And that meant, buying books, going to the library, reading everything I could, going to holistic places, metaphysical places, getting readings, but also not just taking things at face value. So it was a hard time, But I had to ask myself, if I believe this is true, again, if I'm crazy, then this is my crazy and I'm okay with it. But if I believe this is true, I need to put it into use. And this is what I did. On my last kind of leg between one world and stepping into the next, I didn't have I had a car, but at this one time I lived in New Jersey and my car had broken down and I didn't have in my apartment didn't have a washer or dryer. So I had to pack up all my laundry and walk half a mile to the laundromat. So I get to the laundromat and I'm washing my clothes and I only had so much money left and the dryer broke down. And this is 20 minutes before closing time. And I'm thinking, and it's raining outside and I have no car and I have all these wet clothes. And I'm like, ugh. So I was always presented with, you're a victim, right? Come on, you're a victim. Come on, woe is me. That's where you want to go, right? And so I thought, no, I'm learning all these cool things. And I know that's not me. I'm empowered by spirit and I want to put this to use. So I stood outside and I just went over and over in my head in present tense that my needs are met, my needs are met, my needs are met, even if I don't know how to meet them. And that's all I chanted. So somebody who was leaving came up to me and said, listen, I've got 10 minutes left on my dryer. I noticed that yours broke down. Do you want to use it? And I was like, yeah, thank you. So I went inside and I put my wet clothes into her dryer and I was getting the 10 minutes and they were still half dry. And I did the same thing. I went back outside and I just kept saying, my needs are met. My needs are met. I have to believe this is true. I have to believe I live in a benevolent universe, that there is support in seen and unseen ways, in expected and unexpected sources.
Yeah.
And so 5 minutes before closing, an old car pulls up and this little old lady gets out and she walks past me and I followed her. And she was the manager. And I told her what happened. And she said, I'll stay open till your clothes are dry. And here's a voucher for a free wash and dry. And I was like, thank you. And then it stopped raining. And I went home. And I was so giddy because I thought some people who are cynical would say, or don't trust, would say, oh, that's just a coincidence. Well, a coincidence, if you think about it, is I have a need the universe provides. Right. There it is. There's a coincidence. So that was a tough time. And that's just one of many little stories that, I was pushed to trust that, this can work, that this is real, that I'm not fooling myself. And then it was, okay, this is my business and this is what I'm doing. Then it was, how do I make money at this? How do I do that? That was the next lesson.
Well, and that brings up a great question because you have evolved so much over the years that you've been doing this. And so when you first started, were you more of because when we talked, you had an amazing perspective on the value of time for money or the value of a bigger perspective, right? Exchange of energy.
Yeah.
And so when you first started, were you working hourly? Like
I was because that's what I was taught. My parents worked really hard. My dad worked at the post office at night. My mom worked for a Prudential insurance company and everything was an hourly thing. My first job was at age 14, and then I worked at the library for a couple of years and I was an hourly wage earner. So I didn't know anything else and I didn't have an example to show me anything else. That was my model. And when I went into this business and I gave readings by the hour, or a meditation group, it was 3 hours long. And I got paid. I would add it up and calculate by the hour. And after doing that for many, many years, I can't even think, maybe 20 years, I thought I was exhausted.
Right.
I was so tired all the time. And then I was, with Dean and we got married and we were formulating, where do we live? What do we do for work? How do we do this? And I could do what I do anywhere. Yeah. And he, as a marketing expert, also a copywriter and a stand-up comic, we put our world in a pioneer place. People would look at me and go, you don't work, you have to have insurance. You got to work full time. You got to work 9 to 5. You got to, how do you pay your bills? And so I was the random freak in the family, that didn't, or with my friends, because they had the more secure, stable thing. And So I would look at, what do I do now if I'm too tired? Or I went to a reader once in California. She had laryngitis, and she was a Taurus, by the way. And she's talking through her laryngitis, and I just put my hand on her hand and I said, can you give yourself a break? Like, can you take a day off? And then I realized, oh my gosh, I do the same thing. So I had learned from other online mentors, business coaches, and experts in the field of not what I do, but business.
Right.
And what we assembled from different people was, you need to market your business. The way you market your message is the way you want to live your life, how you think of money and time. And I've always had an issue with time because I used to fight with it.
Yeah.
Then I had energy work done on me, and I realized that what I was fighting was being human. And right. And then I thought, okay, let me make peace with that by being in my body,
Yeah.
by taking care of my body, mind, spirit. I have those needs, and not just the spirit, because I would forget to eat or neglect what the body. And it's like, no, I can't go there.
Right.
And so, moving away from hourly wage earner, if I could give that message to anyone in this industry
Mhm.
or any entrepreneur, you're not an hourly wage earner, because with that comes poverty consciousness
Yeah.
and the idea that you can never get ahead, because the only way to get ahead is to work longer hours. And so what I did was to challenge myself, opportunities would come my way too. And I'd say, I'm ready to grow to the next level. Show me.
Right.
And whenever two sources who don't know each other come to you with the same information, it's called the truth.
Right.
And so when I was ready to make some changes, two people who didn't know each other in the same week gave me the same information about doing a radio show. I thought, oh, okay, because I was thinking, how do I reach a larger audience without having to work harder? And so then I did two radio shows, one on AM and one on internet. And I thought, well, that's cool. And then my husband said, oh, you can write a book with everything you talk about. You say the same thing over and over again. So the advice that I would give to people is, the thing you've been talking about forever can be a book,
Right.
an ebook, a pamphlet, a training course. And instead of going hourly, think of packages. Think of, I do my work. I personally have 3 levels,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the introduction. It's called the breakthrough session, and then from there, because a long time ago, and this is true with a lot of readers that I know, it's, oh, someone gets a reading, and then they say, when can I have my next reading? And readers will go, well, whenever you want to book. I would say, I just gave you a lifetime's worth of information. I want to see you act on at least 3 things. Then you can call me. And then my husband would say, that's turning away business. And I'd say, yeah, but that's my standard. That's my standard. At least do something on the list, because if you don't, we're going to have the same conversation.
Right.
And it's going to get boring for me. I'll take your money, but it's going to get boring for me. And you're looking for answers from me that you're not willing to look at yourself. So
Yeah.
I cannot be a crutch for people. So that was very important to me, to not be an hourly wage earner, to not be a crutch for people, and then to design packages.
Yeah.
So group packages like salons, that I would travel around the country and stay at someone's house and do a weekend salon. Now we're working on doing that via, technology.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my husband's job to do that. Just tell me where to show up and I will.
Right.
What button do I push? and I'll just start talking. Or there's the higher end coaching, mentoring package for people who are really wanting to design that intentional life.
Right.
So
I love that. And you know this, but I was just doing a spiritual business coaching session with one of my students the other day.
yes.
About, because she has one packet offering, right? She has one thing to offer. She does this thing for this much money. I'm like, no, we've got to expand that, because if we don't expand that, you don't get to, the same people that you're helping don't get to continue to reap the reward of your help.
Yes.
Because if I've bought it once, then you don't offer me anything else, I don't get to keep coming back.
Right.
But with you, I'm going to keep coming back.
You're right.
Right?
Right.
Because you do so much for me, and truly, I'm speaking from personal experience that there's massive amounts of opportunity to learn, and every time I spend time with you, including this interview, I'm like being smacked in the face with,
In a sweet way.
right, with so much love. But it's so true, and that's something I'm seeing so many of these spiritual business owners are really struggling with, the concept of
Yeah.
time, and they don't understand the concept of simply ask yourself, if I provide this service,
Mm-hmm.
what else could I give my client that will give them a better result?
Yes.
Then all of a
Yes.
sudden doors open up, right? And
You
so,
know, there everything opens up, and you know this, and this is how I think that what you have to offer is such great support, because people in our world, and we've talked about this, people in my industry, they don't ask for help. They're loners, and when they do, they just give too much. And there is a business mentor in the world. Her name is Kendall Summerhawk, and I went to one of her programs in here in Arizona, and she had this great thing. Like, why didn't it ever occur to me? And she said, literally, take everything that you do and divide it into 2 or 3, so that you think that everything you do has to be put into one session.
right,
But if you parse it, and then you can have the introductory session, you can have the middle version session, and then there's the bigger session. You have everything that you do can be broken up into 2 or 3 parts, so that you're not putting in any more work,
right,
but you're offering 2 to 3 programs or packages that can give people options. Because when people like you, they come back, they always say, what else have you got? You're like, what now? What?
right,
So that's, I think, when you work with people that you offer support to them, to say, look, you don't have to do this by yourself. Let
right.
me show you what we've designed, and that's what you have. I love that you have that. I wish I knew you 20 years ago. Or I wish that, ages being the same, I wish that I had that kind of support 20 years ago, because I was just going to psychic fairs and whole life expos and sitting there and giving readings after readings after readings. And, a lot of times people would just, sit down like with their arms crossed and go, okay, what do you got? And I would like, oh, seriously? I remember coming home one day. Dean and I were good friends at the time. This is back in New Jersey. I'd done a whole life expo, and I love the work that I do. But if a skeptic would come, it's harder work for me, right? So, because I have to dig into places they won't allow me to go. And it's always by permission. I don't just go. And that's a side note. Sometimes when practitioners in my industry give too much, they go somewhere uninvited. So I learned that. I used to do that. Oh, I see this. This can help you. But sometimes people weren't asking. So I only go when people ask. So I was at this whole life expo, and I'm doing lots of readings, 30-minute readings, whatever. I'm earning my keep. And a guy sits down, with his arms crossed, and he introduces himself. And I'm like, oh, God. I went, okay, Ricky. And he went, wow, I'm impressed. And I looked at him and I said, I didn't say anything. He said, you called me Ricky. I said, that's your name? And he said, no, I told you my name was Henry. Only my wife and my parents call me Ricky. And then he uncrossed his arms. I did, like an idiot psychic savant. I had no idea. I heard Ricky. He said Henry. And I said, okay, well, Henry, do I have permission? Now do I have permission? So I think it's important too that when people in the metaphysical world, again, tower readers, massage therapists, intuitive readers, astrologers, that it's a business, and to conduct themselves as professionals, so that there has to be a timer in place.
Right.
Yeah, I always go over, because once I get going, it's like blah. But again, what I started to do to save my own energy, because then I developed a thyroid issue and I got really tired. And so energetically, your thyroid and parathyroid is where your spirit comes through for information and comes out. So a lot of people in my world have thyroid issues or adrenal issues. They don't know when to say no, or they don't know when to stop giving. So that's important to have that stopper, a timer. There's no shame in having a timer on my phone. It's a nice sound. It beep, beep, beeps 5 minutes before the end of the session. When I hear the timer, I wrap it up and say, we have a couple of minutes. So, and then I give 2 to 3 exercises tops, because I think people will overwhelm people in my world, give too much, because it's like, then it becomes an addiction. It's like, oh, wait, I forgot to tell you one thing. And people are like, okay, I got to go. And they just keep giving, giving, giving. So.
Well, and I can speak to that from experience, that I had an amazing session with you, and you gave me just a little bit, right? Like a 1 or 2 things to go do. But I've had sessions with somebody else where it's 500 things, and immediately I walk out and I'm so emotionally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I don't do any of them because I'm like, it's too much for me, right?
It's too much.
And so from a person who values the healing and has used it, literally, astrology saved my life.
Yes.
I can speak to, we need you to help us handle it in bite-sized motions, because if not, we're asking for help, but we're not at your level yet.
Yeah. Right? Whoa. Okay. When somebody says that, I want to back up and say, I want you to look in the mirror, because my level, you're a master at what you do in marketing. I am grateful for people like you. If it weren't for my husband, I said this all the time, I would just be sitting here staring out the window, giving readings and writing, because, that's my bliss. That's where I get lost. But Dean will say, okay, focus. We got to get this thing done. I'm working on an astrology masterclass right now. And he'll say, okay, do we have an end date? And I'm like, end date? Wait a minute. What month are we in now? End date. Okay.
Right.
And so I do. And now, so it's helpful. So when you say at my level, I am proficient at what I do. I put in my, Malcolm Gladwell calls it 10,000 hours. I've put in my 10,000 hours. And this is what I do. I do it. I don't need to go into trance to do it anymore. I just, because it's what if someone gives me permission, that's where I go. It's just there. There is no barrier to entry. So when you do your thing, and you apply, and thank you for saying what you've said, when you apply one thing that I've given you or anybody gives you, it's because of you applying it. My grandmother was a Greek and didn't read or write, literally worked in an olive grove in Greece. The bell rang and the gunshot went off and she found out she was getting married. And so my parents were first generation American. And my grandmother had a saying in Greek, and it translates to this: you can bang on the deaf man's door all you want, he ain't going to hear you. And that applies so much to people who, in any business. Yes. So I could suggest something for you to do, but if you don't do it, then you don't do it. It's so then I am not the one who is responsible for your healing. And when you have a business technique and it's not working,
right,
then that's when you probably, what do? You go into, okay, what else can I do? Right. You don't just end there like, oh yeah, it didn't work, I'm done.
Do something totally different. No.
Yeah, you just try something different. Right. So there are definitely types of people who are looking to promote their wares, their talents, to help other people. And then there are people who aren't, and that's okay. So you just have to know how far you want to go with your business, in any field, right? So my level equals your level in marketing. So there you go.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Like the learning curve of like picking up my phone and going, okay, wait a minute, Facebook Live on my phone. I could barely see my phone. I only use it for text my daughter. It's like, wait a minute, I have to, how do I hold it up? Like I went into a whole, like there's a spin happening. So I had to calm it down and go, okay, I'm just going to act as if my needs are met. Right. Because if I don't, and then we run into all that tech difficulty we had, right, because that's life. And I used to get so thrown by that. Did you?
So I literally was known in my family as the person who wouldn't touch technology. Like, I am a millennial who basically grew up in the Stone Age because I refused. And
I can loan you one of my tablets that
right,
I've inscribed.
no, 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 no just like cement tablets, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Oh yeah. Oh no, not like a yeah.
Like, no,
No, I'm talking about the kind with the chisel
right?
and the,
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so funny, Elaine, because the evolution of, I own a online marketing business today.
that's
Right?
funny.
I help spiritual
I
entrepreneurs
love it.
transition into the online world and use social media. And if you had asked me if I was going to be doing that even 3 years ago, I would have told you you're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Go take a flying leap. But let me ask you, Cheyenne, when you were around seven, what did you want to be when you grew up?
An artist.
An artist.
Mm-hmm.
Do
I'm a
you apply, do you use, and what?
I'm a painter.
And a painter. And
Mm-hmm.
are you doing artwork today?
You know, it has been an interesting thing for me because I went very masculine in my career path and kind of canceled out all of my feminine characteristics for a very long time.
Huh.
And only in the last few years have I realized I really need both, right? I need that
Mm-hmm.
balance.
Mm-hmm.
I went to art school. But after high school, I did not pursue any of it. But in recent years, I have become very creative, and I do more of my stuff is through like building sales funnels and building websites, and that I have found to be very creative.
That's so cool.
But I do paint more now than I have in a very long time.
And when a person is around the age of seven, that's when their morality kicks in. And that's when they realize that they may not know to articulate this, but deep down, they know that a job is what you do because that's what you're supposed to do, or that's what pays the bills, or that's what, we get the money to do that. But a profession is why you've come. And around the age of seven, the one thing that gives you bliss, you will always come back to. For me, it was I wanted to be a health teacher and a writer when I was 7 years old, and a health teacher. And my sister took that literally. She was 9, and she went, "A health teacher? Why?" And she said, in high school, in grade school, we talk about health, and I go, yeah, not like that. But I didn't know what. I didn't know what it was. But everything I talk about is about body, mind, spirit healing. So I wanted to be a health teacher and a writer.
How
And
amazing.
that's what I am, right?
Wow. That is
It's
so
pretty darn cool. So think about ask your husband, ask your friends, other clients, what they want to be when they were about 7.
yeah.
And sometimes people don't know and they're still searching. To
Right?
this day, they're still searching. So without my husband's help, he helped me tremendously,
Yeah.
because we're really good friends. That's how we started. We started out as buddies, and then it moved after 4 years into a completely different place that neither of us had ever experienced, but we always knew existed. And that took a little bit of readjusting and working, and then it was effortless. We argue at times, but we've learned how to argue. We resolve, we know how to resolve. We understand our behaviors. One of us flies off the handle, the other one says, "Oh, okay, I'll give you some space. You're going through something right now." And I do remember this. I had a client whose mother was an astrologer, and my client had the worst relationship with her mother. And I thought, if ever I have a child, I do not want to be looking at the chart going, this is why my daughter is this way or my son is this way. So when we had our daughter, Aaliyah, the only thing I really wanted to know was her birth time so that I could do her chart. And then I didn't look at her chart except to know that she was a Taurus, Aquarius, rising Cancer moon, until she was about 4 or 5 years old.
Wow.
And because I wanted to just interact with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then for certain issues, I would look and go, oh, she's going to have trouble when she's tired, or when this is happening, she's going to have trouble with certain, expression. So we worked on expression at an early age for her, to articulate how she was feeling.
Wow.
So and using astrology in that way as a transformational tool because as we evolve, so does astrology.
Right.
I mean, the fixed planets long ago, just as an example, the sixth house, there are houses in astrology. There are 12 houses in the general chart in astrology, and in your chart or anybody's chart, there are 12 houses. But depending upon your birth time and birth location, the rising sign will change, and that determines what planet is on the cusp of each house. I don't have a chart in front of me, or I would show an example. But in general astrology, the sixth house in ancient times was denoted as the house of health and work and service. Now, service meant slaves. That's what the sixth house related to, and how the slaves could reduce the workload for their owners. I mean, I was appalled when I researched that.
Right.
But that's what it was a couple thousand years ago. You know, Greeks had slaves, Babylonians had slaves, the Thracians had slaves. So, but then as we transformed and eliminated, I mean, it took a long time, but we got rid of the slave in this country, we hope. And so astrology changed. And so it's about service to the world, not service at the sake of yourself.
Wow.
And so that's how I look at astrology. And people will, and there's so many different types of astrology.
Yeah.
And so many different definitions in astrology and so many different systems in astrology that I would experience several and say, that doesn't work for me. It might work for other people. But, you know, you have to go with what you experience, and is that your truth? And I think that's really important for people who are listening to this and they've not had a reading.
Yeah.
Because who you are at the time of getting a reading, it will change 5 years from now, 10 years from now. People have come back to me and said, this woman called me up. She said, I looked for months to find you, and I found you. And you made a tape for me, a recording on a cassette. It was maybe 12 years ago or 13 years ago. And she said, I was going to use that tape to record over it so I had something to listen to on the way to work. And she said, I'll just listen. And it was you. You gave me a reading. And everything you said at the time, what you said on the tape applied. But then to who I was now, it also applied. Wow. So she said, and that blew my mind. Like, how could you know this is who I would become? And I said, I just see there is no time element. You know, the reading I will give usually lasts about 2 years, but then beyond. That was the feedback that I got. But what I find interesting is that in spiritual work, you know, when you've come across a principle that works for you, it doesn't matter when it was conceived or implemented, it works. So tried and true, proven it works. You know, so in marketing, right, you'll find things. We've tested things, and sometimes I'll get frustrated. I'll just say, how many more times do we have to test this thing? Why does it just work? Let's just have it work, and I can move on and do something else.
Right.
And Dean will say, no, it's, you know, we're going to survey our audience. I'm like, oh, that's a great question. I mean, that's a great thing to do. And then we'll ask, well, what's the great question to ask them? And then we come to, you know, a different thing. And so I'll learn in marketing that it's not, especially for people in the metaphysical world, it's not always what you think they want.
Right.
So you got to ask them. Right. No matter how intuitive you are and you think, oh yeah, that's what they want. I know what they want. Yeah, no, you don't.
Truly, that's one of the biggest things that attracted me to you is the fact that you take astrology and you use it to heal. Right?
Well, what would you use astrology for?
You know, for me, as funny as it may be, I've always loved it. I've never really studied it, but when I divorced my high school sweetheart, I went through a very 9 years together at 23. So if that any bells,
we are sisters,
right? He was the love of my life. I thought, right? He was my entire soul, and so I went through a very dark time myself and very suicidal, and was very, very much feeling lost, that
Mm-hmm.
and didn't see that there was a possibility of a better life, or goodness would come out of this experience. And so that's why I was so hopeless and so down on life. And I actually went to an astrologist for the first time, and she gave me she did a birth chart reading for me.
Mm-hmm.
And for the first time after going through that, it was about a year after that whole process started for me that I saw her, and it was just hope. Like, it just filled my soul with
Oh, that's beautiful.
and as the one thing that I will always remember is she said, he was meant to be in your life for this reason, right? But you are going to meet, and quote, I kid you not, the exact words were, how did she say it? Like, a real ass man. like a grown ass man is what she said.
I love that.
that you actually spend your life with. And so she, at the time, because I was like you, I was so wrapped up in this relationship, and who am I without that? And
Yes.
so, like, there's this better fit for you, who's a grown-ass man. Well, my husband today is my twin soul, who is 20 years older than me, so he is a grown-ass man.
He is. He fits the T, and that's perfect.
Right? So for me, astrology was hope in despair, that there are good things coming. And so it was more of a reassurance that even if it was really crappy in this moment, that
it's going to change.
Live for. Yeah. So that's what it's always been for me. So for you to give me a different perspective on it has been amazing, because I have such emotional attachments to astrology for that reason, right? Because it truly saved my life.
Yeah, I'm glad it did.
But now I can use it to better my life too, not just save it.
That's right. Because you're evolving, you're changing, you're growing. And sometimes we take 2 steps forward and 15 steps back. And then we just have to stop and go, what? And that's when I will look at my chart. Because I'm not looking at my chart, and I'll say, oh, wait a minute. And I just realized I'm having a Saturn return this year. Oh, no wonder. Because the fatigue, the body, the aches, the pain, it's like, what is happening? Oh, let me just check in. And people laugh at me when they say, this is your business and you don't even look at your own chart. And I go, well, I do. And I look at it as if it's a client.
Yeah.
I don't look at it like it's my chart, because then I get a better perspective. Because when emotions come into the picture, it's harder to see what it is in this moment and the potential for what it could be. So it was, and there's no, I've heard so much fear in some astrological readings. Like I will sample different systems through different astrologers and see what's out there, and see, so that in case I have a need, I can find someone to go to. And I have not actually found someone in astrology. In intuition I have, but not in astrology. And I'll hear things like, all right, this is happening in your chart, and don't let this person, bully you, and you need to stand up for and you need to, and I'm thinking, are you talking to me? Like, that was me 20 years ago.
Wow.
That's not me now.
Yeah.
So yes, if you were giving me this reading 20 years ago, I would say, wow, you're so accurate. But it's like, no, that doesn't really apply to me now. Can we go deeper?
Yeah.
Let's, what else can you tell me that is not the standard, Saturn and the thing, or the Jupiter and the thing, whatever. It's what the planets represent, different aspects of our personality. They're not doing anything to us. So I'm hard pressed to acknowledge a lot of astrologers that I see, not to down anyone, and I'm no better, but the perspective that I have is that if I look at a planet, I look at planets as if they were people showing up at a party. And if Mars showed up at a party, it's like, yeah, let's party. Where's the music? I brought the chips. Come on. I also brought 16 other people. Let's go. Let's do, if Jupiter showed up at a party, it's, I want to eat all the cake, and, I've got the big stories to tell. And I look for those aspects in me. Yeah. When am I ready to, one astrologer did, who helped me a lot, helped me so much. And I would have to say, yes, that's the one astrologer that said to me many years ago, the planets help you to plan it. And I was like, oh, that is so cute. And so I see that as astrology is telling you what time it is. That's all. It
Yeah.
doesn't do anything. It just tells you what time it is. And it's up to you to follow the timing of your own spiritual growth, of your own intellectual growth, or what your body needs. And so that, I have to say, was very helpful with this one astrologer that helped me to get to the place of, she gave me, these are the 4 things that you've come to this earth to do, or the 5 things actually that you've come to this earth to do. So I took her literally. I wrote them down and I went, okay. And I set out on a path to do all of those things. Took me 15 years, but I did all of those things.
Wow.
And then I thought, okay, now what can I do? What's next for me now? That's when writing came into the picture, and having a different type of client come to me, because who you are, whether it's marketing, whether it's the metaphysical world, who you are is who you will attract.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be 20 minutes behind you, literally.
Isn't that
So,
actually?
so what I get, does that make sense?
No, it does. And it brings up a question, because one of the things I want to know from you is, because you have a very specific client base. The women that you help are very, very unique in the niche that you have found.
Yes.
Your ideal. And so if you were to give advice to somebody who is trying to narrow down their specific client, how would you say you did it, or what advice would you give them?
Well, one of the techniques that I used, first of all, was to literally write my ideal client. Is it a he or she or a they? Because we have to be gender appropriate now. So my ideal client, and I wrote an actual mini manifesto of what they're searching for, what they're looking for. But when you write down who they are, you give them a name. And if you've had clients before that you love and you think, this is my ideal client, then break down that person's personality. They make this much money. This is what they do in their spare time. This is what they love. This is their top 3 biggest complaints. Right. So if you can break down the person, if you haven't had a client like this, I've had several clients that I can use as my avatar, mm-hmm. where I would look at and say, they are either professional women who don't know who they are or feel comfortable in their own skin, even though to the outside world, they are professional. Mm-hmm. They are striving to be better than their parents were to them. Mm-hmm. They have resources, yes, but their desire to have an intimate, into me you see, relationship is very strong. And so I will talk to my clients, so I can break down who they are by looking at just 3 off the top of my head. I can break down their behaviors and put them on paper, and then just at the top right, ideal client.
Get very specific.
Very specific, top 10 qualifications, top 10 qualities, and to look at who they are and where do they hang out. And a lot of times I'll get my business through referrals from other clients or other people. That's where I get a lot of my business. We're working on doing more marketing. That's what Dean is setting up now. We've got a funnel going. I've created, if you go to my website, astrologymojo.com, you can get your free birth chart. And with that, you get put on my newsletter, my news list. But you also get a chance to download a report that it took 3 months and several tech people to create. So you can get an idea of how I speak and what I talk about. And then with working with people, I think what's really important is that when I'm ready to attract more people, I literally, I'll do a meditation, doesn't have to be very long, but I will envision a group of people. And I study a lot of neurology and neuroscience and brain entrainment, so that what is very true, and this applies to any industry, when you can envision a situation that has not occurred, and you couple it with a feeling that gives you absolute joy or just total enthusiasm, then you anchor that and create a neuron in your brain that says this is real. Your brain doesn't know what's real or imagined. So the more you focus on the thing that you would like to create and get excited about it, then suddenly you resonate a frequency, and that frequency starts to move out into the world, and then it brings to you people who want to be part of your world. You bump into them at an event, at the airport, you start chattering, whatever, or you meet someone who says, my best friend needs to know about you, and so that's how you magically manifest. Does that make sense?
Yes. Which it's so many people that I speak to who have created real success with a spiritual business have a similar mindset on that. And so you verbalize it beautifully.
Thank you. This is manifesting.
Right.
And marketing is manifesting. It's a very spiritual process. The application, sometimes I get frustrated with, and that's where Dean will take over, and I'll say, I tested it 3 times. Can we move on? And because I get impatient with that, because I just want to create. I just want to show up and let it flow, instead of putting too many things in place sometimes. But then Dean's there, or then people like you are there to help with people like us.
Well, something that I have found helps a lot of my clients in that space is we have the balance, right? We have the masculine and the feminine, just like we have the business and we have the spiritual. We have to balance the two. And so the energy of your gift and your soul can't flow unless we have a way for it to flow for them.
That's right. That's right.
Where the sales funnels come in and where the marketing comes in. So.
Absolutely. I trust it. I trust that it will work. I love that Dean loves it. I love that you love it. I have other loves, and
right?
That's where I focus my talents. And I do marketing, I'll market to my list. And what I find is that Facebook is where we're promoting more now.
And
YouTube. Yeah. And YouTube as well as where we used to, I remember making 100 videos, one a day, and then I put them up on YouTube, and that didn't get me where I wanted to go. So we focused on, this was years ago, and then we focused elsewhere. And so we're just finding what works. And once we do, then we alter it along the way to help it work even better and to be more efficient. So
job of building up a following, because you have a few thousand people on your business page. So
yes,
you owe that success to, because you said you built 100 videos and that wasn't it. So what do you feel like was the things that have helped you grow your actual following?
I'm a relationship person. I'm a relationship expert. I'm a connector.
Yeah.
I like to connect with people. So when I had my radio show, I connected with a lot of people. Then I did a business Facebook page and minimally connected with people, but I wasn't focused on it because I was busy doing something else and doing more personal readings. And then when Dean said, well, let's see if we can reach a larger audience where you don't have to be doing one-on-one all the time, where it can get very tiring. That's when we thought, okay, let's just start Facebook Live. So we did. To me, it's no different than talking to a group of people or doing a radio show. And so this was in June or July of this past year, 2018, where we just figured out the technology and just like, okay, got a microphone and hello, I'm there. I got to look there and have a few notes over here. And I used to hit the mic and knock things over and forget to unplug the phone. It's like, whatever. I'm just going to talk to you.
But I'd mess up my mic. I'd throw my hands around and I'd make it muffly. And I'm like, oh.
I have to remember to keep my hand on this side close to my body when I'm talking, because I'll bang the mic so many times. We've tried, having the mic over the computer, but I have to lean forward, or on the right side, but then I hit my whatever. So it's just a matter of working it and seeing what works for you. And then I like to connect. See, I just did it. I like to connect with people. And so Facebook Live gets me to connect with people. And then how I connect, once I get there, I alter it, because at first it was people coming on, I'm a Sag Libra rising. What can you tell me? and there were all these people, and I thought, the first couple of times I thought, okay, yeah, I'll do that. But then I stopped. And I thought, if I met you at a party and I were a dentist, would you open your mouth and say, I got, it's like, no.
Right.
So I need to set the structure and show the people what I am giving and what the boundaries are. And that's really important in this industry, boundaries. To not cross them yourself by giving too much or giving when not asked. Mm-hmm. And by having the boundary and saying, this is my time with you. This is the structure. These are the limitations. You can click the buy button. Yeah. If not, I'm happy to give you this information now. And to work it that way. And then from there, Dean said, well, what about a podcast? Like, let's keep going. He said, do you want to do TV or radio again? I said, well, let's go for podcast because I don't have to get dressed for a podcast. And that's easy.
I picked it too.
Like, what's below the sweater? Well, no one will know. Could be my pajamas. So we're
launching that soon, right?
What's that?
You're launching your podcast soon?
Yes. We're focusing on January and February to do that, along with finishing up my Astro Masterclass. And it's for people who want to learn how to read their own chart and for themselves and their families in a very easy and comprehensive way. So there's many modules. I'm on module 17 right now, but there's many videos and downloads, and it's an easy course and fun. And we decided that the podcast would start, and we'd prepare for that, because sometimes, we would just like Dean will just come into my office and go, I had an idea. Let's blah, blah. And I go, okay, I'll write an email and just like fling it out there and see what happens. And what we've noticed is that in the past 6 months alone, email open rate has gone down tremendously.
I've noticed that too, not just for me, but for all of my marketing clients, that has been something that all of a sudden even their lists.
Yeah. Yes.
Emails. So
it's the new trend.
Yeah.
I used to get like 20-25% open rate, and then click through was high. I'm sorry. 25% open rate, and then maybe 50% click through. Now it's maybe 2% open rate, 1% click through. It's not very high at all. And so as technology changes and people's needs change, then there comes the parting of the ways. And then again, when we go through growth spurts, it's like we can't do the same thing every day for the rest of our lives. That doesn't exist anymore. We have to transform. So we'll
more into like the Facebook Lives to communicate with the same people.
Yes. And I gotten some emails back from when I sent out email and say, hey, I'm on Facebook. And a couple of people said, hey, if I had Facebook, I would join you, but I don't. And I'm not going to. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Right.
So I put out so much content in emails. Yeah. Here's how to do this. Here's 3 pages on this. And then it was, here's your reading for the month. And then I thought after a while, I need to have a different venue. This isn't working for me. So then it's a little email. Here's what I'm going to talk about in Facebook. Join me there. And now that I met a whole different audience in Facebook. Yeah. And I average, there's a lot of younger women, yes, in their 20s and 30s, but I average the 50-year-old, 45 to 55-year-old.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that can change. Who knows? And I may not know like where to go to. I don't always read the stats. I leave that to Dean and our tech guys. And I just know to show up, to be consistent. Mm-hmm. At first it was 3 days a week. It got a little too much for me. And then I decided 2 days a week, one earlier in the day and one a little later in the day. Because there's different coasts, and I'm also international and have been for many years. So I've got people in Ireland and Slavic countries and England and France, Bulgaria, Germany. So I do my best to make it at least accessible some of the time, Australia as well, Japan. And that's, by 6 o'clock at night, I'm not geared up to do anything except get on the couch.
No, I get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've had years of evolving into the professional that you are today as a spiritual business owner. So
I'm sorry, say that again.
you've
What's that?
you've taken, your journey's taken years to evolve into who you are today. So
Yes.
I was coming to you and saying, Elaine, what is your number one advice for somebody who's just barely moving from, say they're in corporate, right? They have a normal day-to-day job, but they're really wanting to transition into a spiritual business of their own. What would
Mm-hmm.
be the top advice that you would give them?
To understand that they are 20 minutes ahead of the people they are about to attract. And so if they could allow themselves to experience different modalities and to really understand that it's not only ever going to be one way, there's a way and there's another way, so that they will start to attract a different type of person to them. Typically in anything, if you're in a car accident, you start a group, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and then it becomes that group. If someone's in the corporate world, if they're moving to the spiritual world, and I had a friend and a colleague who was IBM corporate.
Oh, wow.
And afraid to talk about her other life where she would experience rebirthing or certain kinds of massage or shiatsu or take different herbs or try, get a reading with me. And one day she decided to take a year off from work, and during that time is when I met her, and I said to her, well, if you're looking to be your most authentic self, then just be who you are wherever you are in as many moments as possible, no matter who you're talking to. Because if you talk to the corporate people, they will look at you and say, well, you've lost your mind. Oh, you're one of those, woo, I can't stand that phrase, woo people.
Right.
Just be who you are and let people absorb the information or not. Because if you're afraid of judgment, you're going to put up a facade. If you think you have to be perfect, you're going to put up a facade. You're not going to attract the right clientele. So be who you are in as many moments as possible. And she called me up 6 months later. I did rebirthing with her. It was really great. And she went back to IBM. And they were sitting around a table. There was a business meeting. And she brought whatever she brought to the table. And then the presentation came to an intermission. And people were just kind of, on their phone. And they were like setting up meetings. And one woman next to her said, oh, I have to get to my Reiki practitioner. And she turned her head. And then a guy across the table said, my chiropractor does this really cool biofeedback vibrational technique. Have you heard about this? And everybody at the table was talking about something other than corporate. They were talking about spiritual. They were talking about modalities. And she said, I do rebirthing. And they were like, give me a card. You got a card? So she brought, and because she was who she was, and I was so happy she followed through, she left the corporate world to find herself and do her thing and combine her spiritual practice and bring it back to the corporate world. So now she gives consults to people in corporate business.
Really?
How to find harmony. And that's what's really important, not to separate the thoughts, thinking you have a left brain, right brain. They work together.
Right.
It's no longer just creativity and logic.
Mm-hmm.
It is coming to a place of, this is my truth and this is my harmony.
Right.
And I'm going to express it. And if it speaks to you, fantastic. This is how I work. If it doesn't speak to you, bless. Have a beautiful day. And without the judgment, because I remember meeting someone in the early years of my practice, and he's a Sag, and he looked at me and he goes, what qualifies you to do this work? I said, his wife was a doctor. I said, what qualifies me is I said, it's not going to be the answer you're looking for. I said, I don't have a degree. I don't have validation from any certified industry. But what qualifies me is the compassion I'm putting in, the learning curve I'm constantly undergoing. I'm a lifelong learner. I don't just learn one thing and that's it, and that's what I teach. And the results that people get validates my expertise. And I hope that it increases. And he went, oh, okay. That's interesting. I was like, yeah, it is what it is to you. But I know what it is for me. And I can get that because some people will say, oh, I have a friend whose brother-in-law will not talk about herbs, won't use any vitamin C. No, he's a pharmacist. And, and she wants to share, well, Elaine's, and I'm like, don't, he doesn't want to go there. Some people don't. So, I think the one advice is to be who you are, as authentic as you can be in as many moments as possible. And if you don't know something, just say you don't know, and that you'll go learn it.
I love that. And for those that are trying desperately to move from the hourly wage to the better opportunity, right? Where because you've been able to help more people by actually
yes, and raise my rates too. And
right?
charge more. Yes.
More and help more people.
Yes, absolutely.
So somebody trying to make that transition, what kind of advice would you give them?
Okay, so if you're already in the industry and you're working and you want to go to packages, it's important to list and be objective and get someone you can work with, maybe a partner, a business partner, a client who's a long-time person who's been in your world. And you list all of your talents. And as you divide them into, well, in my first package, you get this. And in my second package, you get the second half. At least that's 2 packages.
Yeah.
And then don't sell yourself short by thinking, how else can this is what Dean said to me once, because it wasn't in my awareness. I had written newsletters for, I don't know, 30 years, wow. 35 years. And Dean said to me, 12 years ago, he goes, why don't you write a book? And I said, a book? He goes, well, you already have it. You just put your newsletters together. And I thought, oh, and I did. And I wrote a book.
Wow.
And it's called Minutes to Manifesting, How to See It, Get It, Keep It. And now it's used as part of my training programs for my diamond clients. And it never occurred to me. It's like I had already written. All I had to do was piece it together, and he helped me to edit it. So if you have marketing materials that you don't consider marketing materials, you already are talking about the same thing. If you want to increase your earnings, increase your packages, an easy way to do it is to list everything that you have and divide it by 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And then take what you have and record it. Take something and record an online 30-minute, do a Facebook Live, and then you have a recording. It's a training program. Right. So look at technology as your best friend. And, work with people like you who are there to help people like us use that technology and to, come out of the cave. Right. And to believe that it's possible, because if you don't think that it's possible, it's never going to happen. So body, mind, spirit connection.
Oh, I love that. Where can people find your book, Elaine?
Well, that book is only for people who are in my diamond program. But for readings and other programs that I have, astrologymojo.com, and you can get a free chart, but you have to fill in. Yeah. You have to fill in all the information, and it will generate a chart for you. And then from there, you'll have the opportunity to get the report that goes with it, and then or work with me privately.
Wonderful. And I will actually include that link with this video, so people will be able to click on that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anything else about your because your specific program is amazing. What you've done is taken a tool that I would have never considered a tool for healing necessarily, right? It's like astrologers aren't healers, but you've totally transformed it into a very amazing tool. So to talk about what you do, is there anything else you would like listeners to know about you or your specific modality?
Well, thank you for the question. Let's see. Astrology, numerology, empathy, clairvoyance, they are the languages that I use. But what I need when I'm working with another person is their permission to go as deep as possible, so that a lot of times people will say, I have this problem. And I'll say, yeah, but look at your fingers. They're all attached to one thing. So we're going to talk about other things so we can circumvent your mind and get to the core. I like to go to core so that people can literally have an aha quantum leap moment. And then when their energy changes, they leave feeling hopeful from the session. They have exercises to do, and that there's no going back. So, and what I mean by that is people are afraid to make changes because if a person wants to transform something, but yet they are afraid to ask themselves, what's really the issue? Are you afraid that if you change, the people in your life won't change with you? Are you afraid that you will do a disservice to someone, that you will become so different that they won't know you anymore, that, people have a million reasons why they want to change, but yet they don't. They think it's a lot of work, or they think that the reason you came to this earth, you've been talking about, you may not realize that it's your heart's calling. And I'd like to see you manifest in very practical ways over time to get to that place of empowerment, so that you know that what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be on a grand scale, it's just what you've come here to do, is fulfilling you. And when you are fulfilled, you resonate a frequency of absolute abundance. And that's what I'd like to help people do.
Thank you for tuning in to 5D Marketing Secrets Radio. Please remember to subscribe and leave feedback. And if you'd like me to teach you 7 of the most powerful marketing strategies for spiritual business owners in 2019 free, then just go to 5dmarketingsecrets.com and simply download the full report. See you next time.